extended Farm Bill will allow crop producers to make a familiar decision regarding enrollment in farm programs. Growers still have plenty of time to decide between ACRE, or Average Crop Revenue Election, and direct and countercyclical plans. We recently talked with UNL Extension Public Policy Specialist Brad Lubben, who thinks one option may hold the advantage.
Given that we had a one-year Farm Bill extension that reauthorized the current program for one more year, producers suddenly had this ACRE versus DCP decision fall back in their lap that they had really back in 2009, except it's a one-year decision. So the analysis is this: should I enroll in the ACRE program, which provides some revenue protection against average revenue expectations on the farm, and give up 20% of my direct payment? Or should I enroll in the direct and countercyclical program, which gives me a countercyclical payment tied to prices, which is so far out of the money that we don't expect it to pay at all, and 100% of my direct payment? So it's ACRE versus DCP. Is the ACRE protection worth 20% of the direct payment?
Historically, this has been the decision to make, right? And what's worked in the past? Well,
it's interesting. In 2009, the ACRE versus DCP decision was one of how much protection do you get for the 20% of the direct payment you give up. And in 2009, it looked like the protection was pretty strong. You know, the revenue guarantee was average prices times average yields times 90%, and that gave us pretty strong protection under expectations. Since 2009, however, actual revenues climbed, and then 10 they climbed more, and in 11 they climbed more. In 12 they were expected to climb even further, and ACRE got sort of further and further out of the money. So to the point that we hadn't seen any major payments under the ACRE program for major Nebraska crops, a small payment for wheat in 2009, but nothing since. No payments, ACRE doesn't work. 13 is probably going to be a simple decision. And then USDA, National Ag Statistics Service, announced the yield results from 2012, and the dryland yield results for corn and soybeans were so severely cut that actually ACRE for 12 ends up making very big payments. Those payments aren't done yet. We don't have the final number yet, but we're talking about nearly $100 payments per acre just based on where 12 yields ended up. So now we look at 13. Yeah. We weren't expecting ACRE to pay in 13 either. If you take the current guarantees and you compare them to trend yields and current prices, you can't predict revenues falling far enough to trigger ACRE. So why give up the 20% of the direct payment?
Is that the recommendation?
Well, that's one answer. If you can't predict it, why would you give up 20%? On the other hand, we couldn't predict 2012 either. And that turned into be a huge role for the ACRE program. Any sort of analysis of 13 that includes that reality. I don't want to repeat 12, but we certainly are starting the year with less than optimistic expectations for yield. If the rest of the Corn Belt recovers but Nebraska doesn't, we've got lower yields and probably lower prices. Suddenly that ACRE guarantee isn't so out of the money.
Is there anything that plays in here with what happens in Washington? Are farm programs capable of being touched here as we look at these new budgets that are coming out and when they could be implemented?
Well, that's also a consideration that really hit us just as soon as we announced the ACRE versus DCP enrollment for this year. What about potential cuts? We're giving up 20% of direct payment, but there was a chance we'd take that away anyway. Well, as best we understand it, there is no real threat of direct payments disappearing for this year. There is a potential across-the-board cut as part of budget sequestration that could take a few percentage points out of every payment, but there's no across-the-board cut of direct payments. Now, new Farm Bill, direct payments are almost certainly gone, but 2013 is the old Farm Bill revisited, and for now, direct payments, countercyclical payments, ACRE program payments are still fundamentally a part of that bill.
So if I'm making the decision, if I have until June, what are the things I need to weigh?
Right now, with June, we can offer prudence and patience. Look at the outlook between now and June. Where are yield expectations? If we really do get back to trend yield expectations because of good spring moisture and good recovery of the soil profile, if we're back to trend yield expectations and current prices, it's hard to make ACRE pencil out. It's hard to put any probability on ACRE triggering such that it's not worth the penalty. If yield expectations don't get back to trend, if price expectations fall, either of those or both of those really favor looking much more closely at ACRE.